What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York, calling from the quarantine zone again, and this time we are here with Dallas of the LA Maybe. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for having me. Super excited to be here, and I hope you're doing well up there.
Yeah, hanging in there, hanging in there. We got the brand new album, Dirty Damn Tricks, coming out very soon. Do you just want to talk about like how the making of this album was in terms of like the recording and the songwriting and all that fun stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. That's my favorite stuff to talk about. So yeah, Dirty Damn Tricks is coming out March 26th, which as we record this is about a month away. And yeah, we're just super excited about it. So we had a lot of these songs in various stages of completion for several years. Even the oldest song on the album was probably written in about the summer of 2016, I believe. And obviously, a lot of the other ones were written sooner and more recently than that. And our writing process is kind of interesting. It usually starts with me kind of having a seed of an idea or something like that, and then we get it to all the guys, and we all kind of put our stamp on it. And over time, it turns into a full-fledged LA Maybe song. And one thing that really sets us apart from a lot of bands, I think, is we have three engineers in the band, three producers in the band. That's me, Drizzle, our other guitar player, and Rasan, our bass player. We all do production. So all of the recording for this album, everything you hear, every note was recorded by us in our own studios. And then what we did once everything was done was we sent it off to our good buddy Machine, mixing engineer up in his two studios, one in Austin, one in New Jersey, up by you kind of. And he has such a huge list of accomplishments he's done. He did, the first few Lamb of God albums, Crowbot, Clutch, 4 Year Strong. I'm sure I'm forgetting so many, but he's done so much stuff, and he's kind of putting his stamp on it, doing the mixing and the mastering. And then once we get it all back, it's good to go. And as of it's Friday now, as of like, I don't know, a couple days ago, we just got the last mix in. So the album is actually officially fully completed, and we are could not be more excited.
That's awesome. And being that like everybody in the band is an engineer and like a producer, I think it's fair to say that the LA Maybe is definitely what you would classify as a DIY band, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And yeah, I mean, I can't even calculate the amount of money we saved doing that. With every hour we put into this album, I mean, you're talking probably $10,000 to $30,000 that we saved if we were to do that in a studio. So we have the ability to, sit down. I'm recording a guitar solo, and I'm just like, you know what? Just not feeling it today. I'll put it down. We'll come back tomorrow. Can't do that in a studio because you're on someone else's time. You're paying them, $100 to $300 an hour to be there, and everybody's looking at you. And if it's not your day, then that's just what's going on the album. So it's another reason we love it is basically the unlimited time factor we have when we're doing our stuff. We can, I'm tired. Let's call it a day and come back tomorrow. And it doesn't cost us a dime to do that. So we love that about the DIY aspect.
Yeah. Do you feel that like for people listening to for a single such as Mr. Danger or something like that like maybe that one single serves as like a clear representation of what the whole album is going to sound like, or do you feel that every song kind of like plays by its own rules in a way?
Definitely lean more towards the second one, but I wouldn't be so out of touch to say that it doesn't all sound like the same band. Like we have a sound, we're a rock band, but Mr. Danger is definitely the most AC/DC sounding of the songs on the album. So we led with that one because our singer Albie has the history with AC/DC, and of course, if you guys don't know, he actually was one of 4 singers to audition to replace Brian Johnson back in 2016. Of course, Axl Rose ended up getting the gig. We all know that story. But so we kind of steered into the AC/DC angle for the first single. But I mean, it runs the gamut of rock and roll. There's we definitely got our fair share of comments being like, "Oh, these guys are just AC/DC ripoffs or whatever." And I think it's pretty bold to make a full judgment about a band's entire scope of sound based on the first single you hear.
Yeah,
that's pretty bold. But we have a lot more coming that I think is going to show a much wider range of what we do. But yes, it's all rock music. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you like we have jazz, classical. Like, no, it's all rock.
Yeah.
And
well, like, see, like when people, I've always thought, and this is just my personal like opinion and perception, but I've always thought when people classify themselves as a rock band, like I've always thought that rock was a very vague genre because like when people tell me that they're a rock band, especially in today's day and age, do they sound like, Guns N' Roses or AC/DC or Led Zeppelin, or do they sound more like Shinedown or Breaking Benjamin or 3 Days Grace, or, like I've heard people call death metal bands rock bands before. So like to you, like what kind of scope of it? Do you feel like that you have more of like a throwback sort of rock sound? Do you feel like that it's more modern? Like what like do you have like a time period in which you sort of like fluctuate through?
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely consider ourselves a part of the new wave of classic rock, which is a group of bands that sound like classic rock, but can't be classified as classic rock because we're 1 year old, so we don't get the classic stamp. So we have to just kind of abandon that. But if I could call us classic rock, I would. But yeah, definitely with kind of an older school sound as far as songwriting, vocals. The important stuff that your ear is going to key into when you first listen to it: guitar sounds, guitar solos, that kind of stuff. But the deeper you dig, the more you analyze the songs, and especially the production techniques, it's obviously very modern. There's a lot more layers on our album than you would get on something like AC/DC or Appetite for Destruction or something like that. Very bare bones, raw kind of stuff. We have a lot of layers going on in our stuff. There's as many as 14 guitars on a track, and keyboards and all kinds of crazy stuff going on, and tons of backing vocals reminiscent of a band like Journey. Lots of sneaky little funk guitar things reminiscent of someone like Prince or Nile Rodgers. Just so many little things we like to sneak in there. And of course, we like to hit you with a big pop chorus, a hook. You can really walk away kind of humming and singing. And Mr. Danger is a great example of that. Hits really hard out of the gate with some rock and roll, and then drops into a chorus that leaves you, humming it when you're walking away from it, that kind of thing. A lot of the songs on the record follow that kind of format.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see that it almost seems like the best way to describe the LA maybe is like multiple decades of rock because and again, totally like a lot of rock bands they can be criticized for like oh they don't have their own identity, they're just thriving on nostalgia or like they're trying to be the next this or the next that or the new version of this. But like it's fair to say that with the LA maybe the main goal is to also develop your own identity with the sound that you explore, right?
Yeah, sure. And I don't think we focus too much on the details of that. We kind of just write. We're not trying to be unique. We're trying to be good. So we're just trying to write what we think sounds good, what moves us, what makes us feel good about what we're doing. And other people are going to hate it, and other people are going to love it, and other people are going to say we sound like Guns N' Roses. Other people are going to say we sound like Backstreet Boys. Like, who knows? People just say whatever they say because it's just what their brain says, and it doesn't make any sense a lot of the times. But we can't be too worried about that kind of stuff. We have to just keep doing what we're doing, and over time, I'm sure our sound's going to evolve, just like any. Because we're all six people that our tastes are going to change and evolve. We're going to learn new things. We're going to have new experiences, and that's hopefully going to come through in the music.
Yeah.
And right now, we're just sitting on a pretty hard hitting, rock album. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, which is totally acceptable. And I've always said that like people trying so hard to be original, like that is such an unoriginal concept. Like people are like, oh, we're trying to be something that we've never done before, and I try not to be too like pessimistic, but as the years move on, it is going to get harder and harder and harder for people to come up with new
Absolutely.
ideas.
The more music that comes out, the harder it is to be unique, and the further out you have to go to be unique. So what ends up happening is, in service of being unique, you kind of just end up sounding like you just suck. It sucks. It's not fun to listen to. It's just garbage.
Yeah,
and it's unique, but it's not good.
Yeah.
So that's what we wanted to do was not worry about being unique. Who cares? We're just going to write what we think sounds good. If you think it sounds like something else, someone else is going to think it doesn't sound anything like that thing that you said. It's just it's so much comes from the person judging it. It's so subjective,
Yeah, and all the bands that I think would be classified as original or innovative or whatever, I don't think they ever had an intention of that. You know what I mean? Like Guns N' Roses, they had their inspirations, they had their ideas of what they were taking inspiration of. Look at Metallica. I mean, they didn't start the band being like, let's be thrash metal. They were like, okay, well, we like hardcore punk, and we also like, the British wave of heavy metal. Let's try to combine those together. And I heard like a lot of metal bands, they say that their favorite bands were ZZ Top, and they invented new sounds just by playing ZZ Top riffs really, really fast. So
right, you get something like Pantera with something like that, And but the thing about being unique is how far do you want to take it? Do you want to build your own instruments? Because using a guitar is selling out. Don't do that. Everybody does that. That's not unique, right? Yeah. So let's build our own instrument. Like, how far do you want to take it? Let's not use the 12-tone chromatic music scale that we use for every song we've ever heard. Let's go to the Far East and use quarter tones and stuff like how far do you want to take it to the point that like you're being unique? You know what I mean? Like, there's so many things that our music industry is a very small box of what music can be. And honestly, everything we've ever heard for the most part, not counting like some classical stuff, would be considered pop. Everything from Metallica to Guns N' Roses, all the rock music we've talked about would be considered pop music to, a classical composer, even death metal or something like that. Yeah. So it's like the filter through which we look at music is very different, than a classical composer or something like that would look at music. There's a lot of stuff. We think we're being so unique, but we're still just operating in these little boxes. So what we said was, let's just operate in that box. That's fine. Let's own it. We'll make our sound. We'll just make the best music we can. And hopefully, you walk away singing it.
And I think it's fair to say that we've seen so many times where people try so hard to be unique, and then it just ends up like becoming more of an image or an attitude than necessarily about the music. And I think what's great about the LA maybe is like, the music, I was able to compare it to a lot of great rock bands. I definitely see a lot of classic rock inspirations, and it's very well executed. I don't think that it sounds like a ripoff or a watered down version of this. I think it actually sounds very raw and hard hitting and honest. But like, I think in the end, you also have like that we don't give a fuck attitude. We just write what we want to write, and that's the end of it. It doesn't. You don't try to be so original or try to stand out. It's just you're doing what is organic.
Yeah, we play the music we want to hear, and when we are jamming around in the rehearsal room and someone plays a riff and everybody goes, "That's a good riff," we just go with it. We don't worry about like, well, wait a second, like these chords were used in this song. Like every chord's used in every song. So we'll put all that in the back. Write what we like.
Yeah, there's only 12 notes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and like I remember my favorite quote ever was from Rob Zombie. He was like, "My original idea was let's never use conventional drum beats," which is basically a theoretical way of saying let's not make the songs fun for anybody to listen to.
Yeah, exactly. You can't dance to it. You can't move. You can't bob your head. Just kind of like, okay. And there's good examples of that. Tool. They're always in odd meters and doing odd stuff, but it still feels good. It still sounds good.
Yeah.
And Dream Theater, same thing. You can take it. But if you're talking about influences, Dream Theater is basically just Rush 2.0, and then it just keeps going back. You can just trace it back as far as you want.
Yep. And then you could trace it back to the Beatles, and then you could trace it back to Chuck Berry, and then you could trace it back to Beethoven. You could trace it back to the cavemen hitting rocks together.
Yeah. You can keep going back to, monks singing hymns and stuff. It's like everything's inspired by something, and we're absolutely inspired by stuff, and we're proud to wear those inspirations on our sleeves. I'm proud that you can listen to our music and say like, oh, these guys were inspired by A, B, C, and D, but I hear a little bit of this, I hear a little bit of that, that's exactly what it is. It's what all music is. It's a blending of everyone's inspirations into a cohesive final product. So one reason I think we might see a little bit of growing pains is because people have to get on board with the new one. Let's consider what music would look like 30 years from now. We're going to be looking at most of the rock stars we know and love are gone in 30 years. I mean, Slash, for example, let's say, I think he's around 50 or something. He's going to be 85 years old. Like, what's he going to be doing at 85? His hands aren't going to work.
He's starting a new genre called near death metal.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, 30 years from now, it's going to be bands like us and bands that have come after us, people that haven't even necessarily been born yet. So there's growing pains with music, and we haven't really seen too much of that. If you think about popular music, let's focus on rock, especially rock music. Most of the rock musicians that shaped rock history are still alive.
Yeah.
Some of them have passed, but most of them are still here. So what does the world look like when every single rock musician that started the genre is gone?
And I couldn't agree with you more, and I'm really glad you said that because, and I'm not saying this to be pessimistic. It's just the reality, nothing lasts forever. And I feel like when, you're exhausting, like I've always said nostalgia is sometimes the worst enemy of art because, look, I'll always respect the greats. You have to. I know people who don't like, classic artists A, B, and C, but they'll always respect them because they know that what they innovated and who they influenced. But in the end, you also got to start promoting the newer bands because what is it when the older founders of rock pass away? Does that mean rock is going to die with them?
Yeah, and it can't because bands like us and so many others. There's so many great new young rock bands out there right now, and they need people to notice them. So people are throwing their hands up in the. Some people, it's getting better now. Some people are throwing their hands up in the air and saying, "Rock is dead. It's gone." It's like, dude, I can name 10 bands off the top of my head right now that are making amazing rock music, and and they would love for you to tune in. And honestly, if you, not you, obviously, Alex, but just the general you. And if you did, you would love it, but you're not trying to find it. You know what I mean? You're just listening to AC/DC's Power Age for the 100th time or whatever. So, and there's nothing wrong with that either, of course. But don't say music is dead if it's actually not. You know?
Yeah, I think I don't think music is dead. It evolves, and like
We'll have to catch up. Bands take a long time to catch up for that kind of thing, I think.
Yeah, well, maybe what I see in the future is like a reset because there was a period of time where the Metallicas and the Slayers and the Anthraxes and the Megadeths, they were all playing clubs and bars and dive bars and your typical places where you would get hepatitis B just from using the bathroom. But at the time, like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there was very few little bands that were headlining stadiums. Like you had Kiss, but you had AC/DC at the time, but like there was very few bands that were headlining arenas. I think with bands like the LA Maybe or bands like South of Eden, for example, who also is a great band that brings back a throwback sound to it. The Jacks, maybe like they'll be the new generation of bands who start up in the clubs and then work their way into something much bigger.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, music is like any cultural trend. It seems to be kind of cyclical. We see every 30 years or so, it seems it kind of goes back to what it was. So we're kind of seeing, the 80s-ish, the 80s, 90s-ish stuff is really big right now. And I think musical tastes are a big part of that as well. So, yeah, I mean, we've had a lot of years considering when grunge started, but even more, I'm talking more post-grunge, your newer post-grunge bands like Shinedown to the older post-grunge bands like Limp Bizkit or Nickelback or something like that. We've had a lot of years of drop-tuned, low guitars, kind of lower singing, big rock sounds like that. Now I think you're going to kind of start to see it kind of shift back a little bit to more of the glam 80s days where the singers get a little bit higher, the guitar solos get a little crazier. Because for a long time there wasn't a guitar solo to be found.
Absolutely.
We're starting to see it kind of come back to that. So, yeah, I think you're right. I think we might be in the middle of a rock reset. And I think Greta Van Fleet was the one that kind of made me realize, when they blew up as fast as they did, I thought that was amazing because I realized like, okay, there's a hunger for this kind of rock music.
Definitely.
And at the time we were just getting ready to we were in the middle of writing all of our stuff. So, prior to Greta Van Fleet blowing up, I had no idea if anyone would care about this music.
Yeah, I think Greta Van Fleet definitely started a trend.
Yeah, and it showed me that the hunger for this kind of music was there. So that was great. I was super happy about that. I was like, okay, well, this might actually work then. So, and thankfully, we're seeing a little bit of that. Obviously, not to that level yet, but we're seeing a little bit of that ourselves as well with the response we've been getting to Mr. Danger specifically, which is the only single we've released so far. We do have Sucker Punch coming out actually 1 week from today.
Oh, awesome.
That'll be our second single, and then the full album drops next month.
And that led me to my final question. Is there just anything else that you would like to promote for the LA, maybe aside from those new singles, like maybe like a live stream performance or new merch or anything else you'd like to plug?
Tons of merch, always on the website. You can check that out. It's lamaybe.com is where you can keep up to everything, and //store. That has all of our merch there. And if you sign up for the email list, you're going to get 10% off. So that's a good little thing we throw at mailing list members. Beyond that, we're starting our own podcast. It's called Your New Favorite Band, and that'll be coming out around the time Dirty Damn Tricks drops, so March, early April. And the whole point of that podcast is to do what I was talking about earlier and highlight and spotlight our peers and our friends in new rock bands and try to bring the music and the genre and the whole scene, the whole wave of classic rock to new listeners around the world. So that's the goal of that podcast, and that'll be coming out super soon. So we're actually in the process of building our own like physical studio for it. So that's a really fun project that we're excited about.
Awesome, the rock and roll Rogan.
No, exactly.
But
hope we make 75 million a year, but who knows?
Yeah, you never say never. But never. But thank you so much, Dallas. Everybody, we are here with Dallas of the LA. Maybe be sure to pick up Dirty Damn Tricks coming out this March. This is Alex from Heavy New York.